Engaged to my mother's ex-boyfriend, I took him rebuilding my life after abuse and betrayal. Despite my mother's threats and harassment, my fiance supports my dreams. Am I the jerk for finding happiness amidst the chaos? So, I posted here last year at the beginning of the situation, albeit somewhat inadequately, and my mother and her friends attempted to hijack everything, which I later found proof of. Honestly, I was not familiar with how people typically post in these situations, and at that time, I was still trying to recover mentally from a miscarriage, so I was somewhat disorganized. I was just advised that it might be a better anonymous way to seek advice, but now I am going to try to post correctly since I have been reading more about how to structure these posts. Hopefully, this makes more sense now. I do not know. I am 19 years old, although there has been some discrepancy regarding whether I am 19 or 20 due to the state of my legal documents, which I will explain later. I will refer to my mother as A. I believe she is 37 or 38 years old, and my current fiancé, whom I will call K, 40 years old. Yes, I am in an age gap relationship, but I want to clarify that irrespective of what anyone thinks about it, I am not a child, nor is our relationship some bizarre situation. My fiancé did not raise me, or anything strange like that. He has been one of the few people in my life who has encouraged me to step outside my comfort zone and engage in activities that I would not have seen a point in otherwise, and I love him for that. Here is a bit of background. I did not have the best upbringing. My mother had me when she was 18, and she would often tell me that I was merely a product of her attacker or assault during a trip to a big city for a concert or party. She frequently reminded me that I was a mistake she never wanted, and that she was fortunate to have kept me instead of aborting me. That was just her verbal narrative. She has also been physically abusive, but I will not delve too deeply into that. Some of my earliest memories, aside from those with my grandparents, involve my mother waking me up to go to hotels for her to have encounters with men or an incident where one of the random men she was seeing tried to get me to smoke a cigarette, and when I refused, he attempted to burn me with it. I was about 5 at the time. I could go further into what my mother did herself, but suffice it to say, it contributed to a lot of depression and other unresolved mental issues throughout my childhood. Fortunately, I was mostly raised by my grandparents until I was around 6 or 7 years old, although my mother would occasionally be present until that point. After that, I fluctuated between living with my mother and my grandparents for the remainder of my childhood. I have several half-siblings due to my mother's casual hookups or relationships, some of which lasted only a few weeks at a time. I am the oldest among them, which also means I have witnessed the most dysfunctional behavior. I never knew my father. Although I recently discovered that my mother had a relatively normal relationship with him before ghosting him when she got pregnant, simultaneously hiding my existence from him while feeding me stories that plunged me into severe depression. I was deprived of nearly 2 decades of connections with that side of my family, while she also fabricated extreme stories that did not happen even then. For all I know, she could have been assaulted separately, but I doubt this account because, during the last time I confronted her about the events related to that, she lied and claimed that my grandparents were present for the hospital visit after the so-called assault occurred, and there were records. She has refused to show me any records since then, and both grandparents confirmed that they were not present for any hospital visit of that nature, so I am uncertain about the validity of even that information. Moreover, she has a history of doing this to the fathers of her children. One of my half-brothers only recently started contacting his father, and I do not even know what his dad looks like. If we encountered each other on the street, I probably would not recognize him as my half-brother's father due to how little I was around my other half-siblings' fathers. My mother removed me from school after elementary school, and throughout most of middle school, I did not really attend. She tried to claim she was homeschooling me, but she would barely make a printout for me to fill out weekly. After that, I managed to attend online high school, but I could not graduate during my last year because I could not take the SATs. However, my fiancé has motivated me a lot recently to start working toward getting a GED and even studying for college if I desire. He has been incredibly supportive, and prior to this, I did not see the point of it given how far behind I was in everything. However, I am catching up, and I eventually want to attend college for botany or ecology. I love plants. This illustrates that our relationship is not some strange arrangement. He is not trying to control me or any other nonsensical notion, and he has been supportive of whatever I want to pursue. I love him, and although I may be young, I am not naive. When I was 16, just before turning 17, my mother physically attacked me for what I hope was the final time. I suppose I kind of snapped at that point and could not tolerate it any longer. A few months later, I decided that I would either seek emancipation or report her for the abuse. This was around the time when other family members, like my grandparents, discovered that she had been physically assaulting me, even though she attempted to downplay the events as much as possible. Eventually, she allowed my emancipation, and I left at 17, moving out of state. Before I departed, I retrieved the rest of my belongings, legal documents, etc. from my mother, and there was an error or misprint on one of my documents that I assumed was just some kind of mistake at the time. It has taken me over a year to fix, but I have recently found evidence suggesting that my mother possibly manipulated this, as she has been misrepresenting my age on different documents, which aligns with the error. After I left my mother's custody, I obtained my own job, mainly in customer service or fast food, nothing remarkable, and effectively started my own life. I dated for a while during the first half of the year at 17. Throughout this period, I also attempted to stay in contact with my younger half-siblings through their fathers, since I did not want to have any interaction with my mother. My current fiancé was one of them. Remarkably, we got along quite well and became more casual friends during that time. Eventually, I began developing feelings for him. We started dating, became official, and later got engaged in 2024. We have been together for almost a year and a half. During the first few months of my relationship with my fiancé, I became pregnant with our daughter. Think of that what you will. But I love her with all my heart and would not change having her for the world. And I gave birth in 2024. My mother learned about my pregnancy approximately 1 or 2 months before I gave birth, and we had a phone call, which was the first call we had in over a year or more due to my reasons for cutting her off. When she found out about my relationship and my pregnancy, she threatened to ensure that I would never see my half-siblings again and claimed that this is what she expected from her mistake, along with a bunch of other derogatory comments, before hanging up. This hurt to say the least. She was not only degrading me, but also my newborn daughter at the same time. Pregnancy hormones made me an emotional mess, and I do not even understand why she cares since she was already cut out of my life. So it is not as if she should be judging me when she was not even present to begin with, but those are just my thoughts. In the months leading up to my daughter's birth, my mother sent me texts about how she was informing one of my half-siblings about what my fiancé and I were doing in the bedroom. I still have the text messages. In my opinion, who discusses such matters with a child? When I confronted her about it, she indicated that my half-sibling had to learn about my fiancé's and my relationship in the same manner she did, so she had no choice. Like what? Most of my other half-siblings already knew about my new relationship and did not have an issue with it, but she was pulling this stunt with the one who did not. It was just gross in my opinion. After I gave birth to my daughter, my mother filed false reports about me to the police and Child Protective Services, which is even more ridiculous since she was reporting me as a child when I was an adult. While my fiancé was at work, and I was recovering from childbirth with our baby at home, I had to deal with a SWAT team level of law enforcement and CPS, which involved explaining my age and the events surrounding everything, along with various other matters, which was a pleasant experience. They also mentioned that she had reported my fiancé for some disgusting accusations relating to the half-sibling I mentioned earlier. So that is where the texts about those matters surfaced, at least as far as I assume. Ironically, he was not in contact with my half-sibling during the time they were claiming those allegations. My mother changed her story about the events 3 or 4 times, so it did not hold up, and fortunately, that is an abhorrent thing to accuse someone of in the first place. However, given what she said about my actual father, it is not too surprising. When law enforcement and CPS did not take much action, my mother and her friends began making harassing and character-defaming posts across various social media platforms, claiming all sorts of disgusting things about my fiancé and me, and that I was missing while he was abusing our baby, which he wasn't, obviously. These posts spread quickly, and many of them included pictures of us, our home, vehicles, phone numbers, addresses, etc. This not only put my fiancé and me at risk, but also endangered our baby girl, my mother's own grandchild, and some of her own children. This harassment persisted for months. We were followed intermittently by random strangers, some of whom were armed. At one point, a window got shot out. We recorded videos of people driving by our home or idling in our driveway at 2 or 3 a.m., filming us or following us into town. Several times, my fiancé experienced a medical emergency requiring him to go to the hospital while we stayed in a hotel overnight, and even then, people would continue to follow us and harass us. It was a nightmare. Eventually, I became pregnant with our second child. However, given the overwhelming stress we were enduring, I miscarried. At that point, we had to leave the state due to the emotional damage we experienced from everything. The latter half of 2024 and the beginning of 2025 have been challenging, to say the least. My mother also initiated a legal battle against my fiancé for full custody of her previous children. The issue was that she never properly served him or informed him about what was happening. They were still in contact while she was pursuing legal action against him, and she never communicated anything to him, so he defaulted on much of it before he even had a chance to fight for partial custody or visitation. Once we became aware of what was happening, we almost immediately traveled to my mother's state, and my fiancé has been searching for ways to reopen the case just so he can have a voice in the proceedings. There was also never any guardian appointed for her previous children, meaning it was just whatever my mother stated in court since no one else was there to provide an alternative view. In the meantime, I have followed the little helpful advice I received from previous comments when I first posted on Reddit regarding my legal situation. I have accumulated substantial evidence about what my mother did to me, ranging from hospital records of trauma to the miscarriage caused by stress, which would not have occurred without dealing with the insane harassment initiated by my mother and her friends, to the document issues, to harassing emails and posts directed at me, even including her admissions at various times about how she attacked me. We will see where everything leads. One positive outcome is that I managed to contact my half-brother via Facebook, which was significant because my mother had claimed that he was living in fear of me and my fiancé, which is entirely untrue. He has expressed that he is fine with us and wants to maintain contact to receive updates on his niece, quite a contrast from my mother's narrative. At the moment, we are just doing our best to rebuild. This was around the time our second child would have been a newborn, so it has been painful recently, but we are trying our best. Most of our wedding plans had to be put on hold because of all the insanity surrounding us, but my fiancé and I have been working hard to rebuild with whatever resources we can. I know there will probably be a lot of judgment simply because of my relationship with my fiancé, but I do love him. Our being together does not justify the smear campaign and harassment we have faced. Am I the antagonist? My fiancé has been incredibly supportive in helping me pursue what I want to do. He has even been assisting me in starting my own business, which is related to plants. He is a good father to our daughter. My mother was already excluded from my life before I even began my relationship with my fiancé. It's just difficult not to blame myself, you know.